Hello and welcome to Shape the System, where we find and tell the stories that help people to rethink the way the world works. We interview people from all over the world who are helping to change our systems for the better. Shape the System is an independent podcast with support from KPMG High Growth Ventures, who help ambitious founders and their teams scale up for success. More about KPMG High Growth Ventures after the interview. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Hi everyone, I'm Vincent from Shape the System. Welcome back, and joined by David today from Feedback Organic, which is amazing. Now we're going to set a little bit of scene here. If you can hear it, you probably can. We're in a paddock today. Where are we, by the way, Dave?
Yeah, and on a farm in Cardiff Heights.
Cardiff Heights. So now, for our non-Australian or non-New South Wales listeners, where is Cardiff Heights? Where are we?
Yeah, it's about 5 kilometres from the centre of Newcastle, which is a regional town, New South Wales, on the coast.
Oh, right on the coast. We're probably 15 kilometres from the coast, I would say, in terms of the beach.
Yes.
Right near a body of water.
It's very delightful.
We're not in a place you would typically associate with being a farm. We're going to talk about farming today, which I'm excited about. We're going to talk a little bit about the nature that we the relationship we have with our food and how our food's grown. And some of the challenges inherent in that. We're going to talk a little bit about the feedback organic model, which I'm pretty excited about. But what I want to start with first is the nature of the food system at the moment. And you've come from a long lineage of farmers. Mm-hmm. I think you said 5th generation when we were talking earlier.
Certainly the coin phrase.
Multi-generational farming family, which we will talk a bit more about later. Tell me from your observation of food and a relationship with food and how food's grown, What's some of the problems with the way the food system works at the moment?
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
As well. I'd say that I've actually, just from doing what I do, and we'll get to that at some point, has been a real eye-opener to the problem of our food production system, for sure.
Right.
And I'd say for me, for my journey, what it's been is what Feedback Organic does is actually reconnecting with people with where their food comes from. And so the problem that I found is actually all around the disconnect from that, as in knowing how food is produced, and the kind of the recurring problems of if we don't manage production of food well, in all stages of it, as in for logistics, from actual
the growing
cultivation of it as well, and then actually what happens when we have put a little bit too much on our plate as well, and then what do we do with the excess?
Right.
So the problems that lie with all of those compounding significantly for every one of us.
Okay. And so, you've touched on a few things there. I want to go into kind of all of them, hopefully. And food wastage is obviously one. We've covered that a little bit on the show. We had Ronnie Khan from Oz Harvest on, which was fascinating and awesome. But you talked about this disconnect from food, and I'm curious about this because I think, there's these kind of, you walk into a supermarket, and for those who eat meat, you see a bit of chicken and you have no idea of what a chicken is. Chicken in your version is breast meat. So talk to me a little bit more about the kind of disconnection in food. And also want to know, I know this might sound like an obvious question or a loaded question maybe, but why is that why is it a problem? What's the problem with disconnect?
I've been contemplating that myself recently as well. Is it actually a problem that we're so disconnected? If we actually produce food in such a way which is sustainably produced and things like that, it actually opens up a huge question about that.
Right.
So I myself am still pondering about what does the future look like of the production of food?
Right.
So for us, it's all good, beautiful, authentic rain happening at the moment. I feel, is there a problem? So for us, what I found is the disconnect and the problems that ensues from that is the production of, it's not valuing food, I guess, is the problem. If we put a little bit more time into the production of food ourselves so we can reconnect, is it actually important? Is it actually important what we do with the excess food that we have?
Right.
And I think it's a general sense of complacency we've got with our connection with food, that it's just so convenient nowadays.
Right.
That we've got it everywhere. Should we actually care about it in that sense?
Right.
And is there a role for places like what we're doing, which is reconnecting with where our food comes from?
Okay.
I'm happy to dive into that further as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the thing that I've kind of observed with people's relationship with food is that if you have a devalued or a disconnected relationship with it, and I don't have the data to support this, and if you do, tell us, but the level of nourishment that you're getting from food, and part of that is the actual nourishment of the food itself, but also food as a vehicle for, the relationship with other people and emotional support and all the rest of it. Is that kind of what's the symptom? What's the cause here? People get disconnected, and as a result, they don't have the following things, or that is a sign of being disconnected.
There it is. It's a funny thing, isn't it? Like, how did we get so disconnected as well? Probably from convenience. But I feel like what these models of, which I should touch on at some point.
Well, we're going to get to the solution.
Exactly.
I want to understand the problem.
What it actually is I feel like what these benefits are from this is research just heralds an array of being out in the open, hands in the soil, eating good food, connecting with others, and actually understanding the benefits of those perhaps like side or additional benefits of just eating nutritious food.
Right.
And so it's actually bringing community back, and perhaps the cause of the problem is that we have started to maybe not associate in ourselves as a community body itself. Like, we've kind of moved into individual apartments, or maybe just a little bit more isolated.
Right.
And that actually heads it into the story of why I started this, because I myself was becoming a little bit isolated on our family farm and wanted to reconnect. And I think that's one of the huge players and motivators for me to make that happen for other people.
Okay. And so getting to this idea of, like, it sounds like food has almost become more transactional, right? And I don't want to put this all on fast food. I think, prepackaged meals that you make at home allow you to have access to nutritious food, but it still doesn't come with a whole bunch of the things that happen when you're actually around that food. Yeah, like I'm just specifically on this part. That's kind of the thing I'm trying to get stuck on, because I think what we'll get to in the solution with Feedback Organic in a minute, it relates to this idea of how you're kind of bringing the food production and the food consumption closer together. And so the disconnect is what would you observe, or would you say from the data is actually what's the net impact on people? People who are disconnected from their food are less healthy, or they're less happy, or what's happening?
Yeah, I think it's so funny from me starting this. I feel like my friend groups my network of people have changed so much from just by doing this, and I think that indicates the type of people that grow food, perhaps. And it's like it's kind of hard to describe, because there's 1 billion people worldwide who are now growing produce in cities, which is fantastic. And
really?
Yeah, absolutely. In 2021,
like, not as just a kind of an exaggerated number, like actually 1 billion people.
Absolutely. In 2021.
Yeah,
that's what the UN reports. And that's the actual fact. So that it's actually growing that significantly. And what that's showing is there's this societal shift away from traditional commercial agriculture, or at least a shift which is helping towards like actually reconnecting with people where their food comes from. Right. So what we feel like we're part of that is how we can make that happen for other communities. And I think, why is that disconnect happening? I'd say there's a couple of different generational kind of side effects of, like, my father's generation. He was like, I think we actually skipped a generation, to be honest. Dad was 50 when he had me. So there's this kind of middle generation, which...
You're a post-war baby.
But I feel like there's a generational gap between really nourishing that food, of growing produce in your own home and connecting from that. But then this great desire to go into a city, perhaps where you're really limited to actually be able to grow your own food because you're in such a small, confined space. Right. And maybe it's just happened by chance that we have taken quite an easy route of convenience happening through like larger supermarkets. Our lacking ability to grow produce now, what is traditionally what we used to.
Yep.
And perhaps that's one of the biggest problems that we're going for convenience, but also wanting to urbanize things.
Right. And we urbanize to the point where what we're seeing here, like where we're sitting today,
which absolutely
isn't possible, or
I think this models like this are fantastic, but it's what the problem is I'm thinking, like, I remember hearing a stat, I think it was 10 years ago now, that 80% of the world's population is going to be living in cities in 5 to 10 years, which is and like with that it comes, where are you? Like,
where's the food coming from?
How are you
growing
connected to food? Yeah, exactly. And there's so many myriad ways of new businesses coming out there for vertical farms and everything. That's fantastic. And it's just probably that gap in between where we've been and where we're going.
Right. And so in terms of where we are today, so we talked before, we're 15 Ks or something. I made that number up. I don't know how far we are. Is that about right? Okay.
Let's run with it.
We drove for 15 minutes. It's about 60 Ks an hour. I figure we're about right. But what are we on? You talked before, we're on some Polish guy's land.
Yeah, Henry.
Henry?
Yep, absolutely.
All right.
And setting the scene for that. Yeah, Henry, where we're at right now, we've got about an acre of land here. It's pretty urban, I'd say.
It's pretty urban.
It's pretty urban.
Look, there's someone's backyard and their clothesline.
Yeah,
it's raining,
and we're surrounded by about 10 other properties in this little isolated spot. Or it kind of feels like you're in this little system which doesn't. How is this even here?
Right.
And it's, as we were touching on as well, hasn't been developed because it's zoned in such a way that it can't actually be developed, and that's actually maybe utilising those kind of situations that we can actually do more of this in those senses. In that sense.
Yep.
But Henry, he was a legend. It all came around by knowing people, who linked up to land that was available, and there are certainly organisations out there who offer that currently all around the world.
Right. That help find land that's available to do urban farms or similar.
Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely. Which is
I
great.
didn't know that existed.
Link to those people together as well.
Amazing.
But as I was touching on, this happened because Henry just didn't want to mow his lawn. And that's I think there's a huge area here. And if you can provide the win-win for everyone that's associated with it, including the cafes and people who are eating our produce, there is just so many wins from doing things like this.
And so this bit of land, you said it's an acre. Yeah. It's hard to imagine how big an acre is because I'm looking at one and I still can't really get my head around it.
Let's do. How can we do? Oh, actually, it's about half the size.
Is it a football pitch? Okay, great. Okay, there's a sporting one here. I don't even play much sport, but hopefully everyone listening knows. I know roughly what that looks like.
It might even be 60% of a soccer pitch.
Okay, so all right, 50 or 60%. Perfect. One of those two.
Yeah, and so it's a small footprint.
Yeah, it's small. And so the thing I guess I was going to ask was, if you had that much land, realistically, how much food can be grown on that land in the way that you're growing food? Totally. And the numbers are hard to get their head around. I think you
throwing some figures around.
You threw around some more. What annually? What might?
I think we'd be able to. The last 5 years, we've produced 40 tons
of food a year.
Food here, of just here over the last 5 years. That's in those last 5 years. So you can do
8 tons a year.
Correct. And that's significant. And I think we could do much more than that.
We're getting it. Sorry, 8 tons means a lot of carrots, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, exactly.
How many plates of food? How many people are we talking about?
Well, let's work it out. Whether I'm the mathematical genius who's going to work this out now. But one meal is considered as 33 grams. So that's an incredible amount. There's 1,000 kilos in a ton. So, yeah.
Okay, so 33 times 3. Okay, that's a lot of meals.
Mental note.
Yeah. It's 3 million meals or something.
Yeah, it's quite a lot of meals.
It's quite a lot of meals.
On a footprint of less than an acre. And I feel that's the whole point of that is that it's just, this has been a pilot to say, hey, look, this is a model that works. We're converting food waste into food. Yeah. And a lot of food.
I want to talk about the restaurants in a minute, but I want to understand, I think there's a couple of things here that I think are either not understood or maybe misunderstood. It depends on where you're at in the kind of knowledge of food cycle, but there's a lot of sort of dialogue that says large-scale farming is the only effective and productive form of farming in terms of output and the productivity of the land. Mm-hmm. And if you've got a plot of land that's out the back of Henry's place that's generating 8 tons of food a year, and it was grass before, it feels pretty productive. It
feels like something's going on.
Well, compared to nothing being there before, absolutely. Right? So the measure of is it more productive than a farm out the back of Idaho might not be a fair comparison or even a relevant comparison.
Yeah, there's so many different angles you could take from this as well. I guess the one major angle of what we're doing here is that it's the sustainable version of agriculture in an urban context.
Right.
Whereas the traditional commercial way of agriculture for many years, certainly the chemicals and the flow-on effects of that for different production methods has certainly got us food for many, many years, and it's still looking like it will. But I think there's a shift that's happening on that commercial scale as well, which is for regen ag as well, and that's certainly happening.
Regen ag, regenerative ag,
for sure. And that's just giving the land some time to actually take on its own duties of just appreciating
soil.
Absolutely, giving the soil the energy that it needs to just actually produce for you, but in a sustainable and not trying to expect too much from it.
Right.
I guess.
Right, non-extractive kind of.
Yeah, well, you're letting it do its. You're doing its.
Just crop rotation and stuff.
Absolutely. Getting the plants we're just starting to do it up at our family farm as well, which is grazing to a point with beef cattle and where they're not completely bringing it down.
Sorry, I just want to pause there.
Yeah, that's great.
Anyone doesn't think we're in a residential setting. That was someone emptying the glass of their bins. Please continue.
No, that was on point.
That was beautiful.
We'll shoot it in a couple of minutes as well. It was great. It was just saying, so we now have beef cattle up at our family farm, and our model is changing around that as well. Whereas Dad's generation, a couple of generations before, was spraying plants and getting synthetic fertilizers on the farm itself. Right. But now it's just a way of appreciating the land. And
are you saying he's changed the way he farms the land?
Dad's no longer with us. Bless his heart. But Sis is up there doing that, and I'm up there a couple of days a week as well, making this shift to a different regen.
And is the thing driving? I know we're a little off tangent. We'll come back to it in a sec. But is the thing driving that market demand for that, or is it we want to farm the land differently, or we think we'll get different and better results? The food will be better. What's driving it?
I think there's so many things that can tie into that. Right. I think it comes down to a general understanding that things need to change.
Okay.
And that's one of the biggest motivators. And if there can be kind of economical benefit for that as well, with return on your produce,
Yep.
whatever essence that is.
Yep.
It's just that's the way it's going. It's being pushed by consumer trend, and for sure,
Right.
and that's where things need to happen. So
That's interesting you say that, because I think a lot of the time, especially things that operate at scale, right? The energy you buy, the food you buy, the money, the bank you put your money in, right? You think, what difference does the individual make? And an individual, acting in isolation, sure, but a group of people saying we would prefer to buy food made a different way.
yeah, the industry's changing for sure on smaller scale farms as well, and large scale. It's just. I was talking about this with another kind of other friends recently around this. Like it's such a big shift from that traditional, or when I say traditional, as in older, not necessarily sustainable version of agriculture.
Right.
As in,
What's the name for it? Is it traditional
completely
farming?
blanking at the moment right now, but synthetic fertilizers.
Yeah.
And chemicals.
Lots of nitrogen in the soil.
Oh yeah, in excess of what should be there normally.
Right.
And I think it's this is a slow process. Like farmers don't necessarily, let's talk about medium range farmers. They don't necessarily have the funds to just significantly change their way of farming, like just in one go. So it's this, you have to make the small steps that you're still making an income through a traditional way that you're doing it, and then making the right steps to change the ways you're producing.
And when you bring it back to what you're doing here, when you find a Henry and you get a plot of land, you can kind of just start from a blank slate and say, this is the best way to farm this type of land.
Totally.
Now that we know what we know, let's start here. Is that what's happening here?
I'd say so, yeah. I think what's important to do as well is to find and tap into the eager talent who wants to do this.
Right.
That's the really important element, because you need programs to encourage people to do this. If you just set a blank canvas at the moment, there are so many people now, schools around here who have never been to a farm. So this is actually
they've probably driven past that gate.
but not only that, they've driven past it, but they didn't even know perhaps that once they've come down here, they're like, maybe this is a future for me. This is something that they haven't. It's like you're creating a new interest and potentially a new generation of circular economy based urban farms.
Yeah,
and that's what one of the benefits of things like here. But talking about the production style here, going back to is that when those people find that, hey, actually this is a future that I'd like to pursue, is they might have been researching a certain style of sustainable agriculture themselves. Right. So there's a gazillion different types of ways that you can grow food and in a sustainable manner. Sure. So I think that what you need to make sure is that when we set these up somewhere, we find another Henry for so many different people, is that to keep the individual farmers, the new farmers, passionate, as in the new generation of urban farmers, is they need to pursue something that they're interested in, not necessarily you need to be rigid and stick to this little model. Yeah. You need to have the ability, so it just keeps them, passionate.
Keeps them interested.
Yeah.
And let's change gears a bit, because I want to understand now the relationship between this particular farm, which is cool. Thank you. No, but what I was going to say was this particular farm is you're moving from here to somewhere else. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. Yep. So did you have a name? Does it have a name? Did you call this? Yeah.
This is just Feedback Organic. Yeah, I guess.
It's just Feedback Organic. Okay. Yeah, but what's the next one going to be called?
Well, I think actually called the
Feedback Organic 2.
Number 2. It's I think the entity itself, who started from the employees I had here, now they're creating their own entity somewhere else. Right. I'm not sure whether they've actually named their farm, but their business is called Feedback Farms. Okay. And I'm happy to them to kind of
they'll lead under that. Okay.
Yeah, and it's really great.
Okay, cool. So it's sort of in Newcastle, just out of Newcastle. And what's the main thing that's been grown here?
Here?
Yeah.
A variety of lovely...
of everything. Give me the list.
I guess the key is that it's seasonal. Okay. That's the thing as well, to make sure that we're sticking to what we can grow. And that's an example for others to say, hey, this is actually, you can't expect X fruit or whatever coming in a certain season is welcome. So here, carrots, broccoli, cabbages, zucchinis, cucumbers, tomatoes. So it's all so blank here at the moment now. Kale, everything that's associated with that. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Full spectrum of things.
Yeah, it is. It's all seasons.
4 seasons. Okay. And is it 4 seasons or is that not?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Yeah,
I know very little about
pumpkins.
farming.
We just let them do their own thing. You don't even need to plant them, and they
just take over.
Yeah. That's seriously.
Henry probably had those before you turned up.
Yeah, I think actually, to be honest, they came out of our compost as in the food waste.
No one ever planted them.
Hundreds of them who just found most of our harvest knives throughout the food waste.
Amazing. All right, so you've got the farm here, and then there's 30 restaurants that you supply with food from here.
Yeah, totally. Well, we collect from around 30 restaurants of the food waste, and if they need an order of our produce, absolutely, they'll go back to it.
Okay, so that's a bit I'm trying to understand. So there's a bunch of restaurants, and you take their food waste.
Correct.
Even if they're not buying your food.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, Well, it's a revenue generating side of that as well. So there's a commercial based subscription for them to actually collect it as a service. So
right. Okay.
Yeah, that's a
okay. So this is a bit I want to understand. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've got a service that says you're a restaurant. You've got a bunch of food waste.
Yep.
You would like for it to be dealt with, but dealt with sustainably.
Yeah.
Okay, and so we provide a service that allows that to happen.
Yeah. I think there's a couple other value propositions from that, because there are other services who potentially go and compost this on a commercial scale, and that's fine. But there wasn't necessarily anything around here, and it's only just being able to do that now. We've actually partnered with Ramondis, who is helping us out to do this. So we've started to outsource the food waste collection to them and the composting, but we end up getting the product at the end of it, and the lovely compost.
Yep.
And then we apply it back to our farms itself. So from that, we charge a small fee to cover that. But I think the value proposition is that people who are paying for this subscription are supporting models like this.
That's the kind of thing I'm trying to understand, is what is the relationship now between the restaurant and you, and what is the relationship between the people who are going to that restaurant? Like, do they have visibility
of what's going on? Yeah, we've got all... my face is on the back of...
Is it?
Unusual spots in restaurants and cafes, toilets and things. It's great.
Talking about food, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm here to shill the thing, whatever the thing is.
It's been quite a mission to establish a story of what this is as well, and because there is obviously value in those individual cafes conveying what they're a part of to their customers, so that they support them for sure, for making those sustainable choices as well.
I guess that's the thing I'm trying to understand, is like, you sit down at a restaurant, you order food.
Yeah.
In some part of that context, right? I remember being in a cafe in San Francisco 7 or 8 years ago, and they had a chalkboard. Yep. We're definitely outside, by the way. For those of you not in Australia, that's a kookaburra, or a bunch of them.
I'm just sitting on one of the birds.
There's literally a kookaburra there. This is awesome. And the rain's kind of stopped.
We are.
If anyone doesn't think this is legitimately outside on a farm, that's what's happening. Yeah, this restaurant had a massive chalkboard. Mm-hmm. And on it, they had every single place where it was all coming from. Yeah. And I think what was happening was people would go there, they would have the, eggs, huevos, or whatever it was that they had. And they're like, where are these eggs coming from? I need to go to this place and I need to have this thing. I'm trying to understand if this is kind of what's happening here.
So what we do, we basically have a little kind of stand which has our feed box. There's a little postcard thing you can take away, and you're like, we're growing food's future. You become part of this local solution. So we kind of advertise that. There's many of the certificate of excellences throughout the cafes and things like that as well.
You're giving them certificates.
Yeah, absolutely. For them being a part of...
for being excellent.
For being awesome. And it's just like, as you can imagine, you've got to try and promote it that is, in a sense, that is not overwhelming for those individual cafes. They don't want everything
They don't
everywhere.
want compost everywhere.
Yeah, but it is sometimes on their menu for sure, but we have kind of display stands with our kind of products so that you can be a part and support this cafe by what they're doing by purchasing one of our feed boxes, and they'll just continue the cycle of support. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the feed boxes, because this is the next part.
Yeah, man.
So talk me through this. This is a service directly to the customer.
Yeah, we just get it straight. So in other words, we provide a day of harvest box called the feed box.
Right.
And that comes from where we're sitting, a couple of metres away.
Yep.
Where the kookaburras are. And we deliver straight to...
garbage. What's happening for the next door neighbour. Exactly. Unrelated to the farm.
No. And we deliver our produce about an hour and a half after harvesting. And that's...
Wow.
Yeah, straight to individual subscribers. And that's been... on that base as well, actually. Like, Feedbox will have a seasonal bounty of whatever we're growing, plus if there are some other things we need to bulk up. We do work with another whole food service as well if we need some things that we like a bulking up of some potatoes and things like that, if we haven't got that as many that we need for this week.
Right.
But other than that, it's day of harvest to the door, and we can also offer them the food waste collection as a part of that kind of subscription
to the end customer.
Yeah, as well, as in more to do with if they need to do something with their food waste. We host. So there's a thing called Food Cycle, which will be host our food waste bins around from different communities and different households.
Right.
And then a household will join one of those bins, and basically each week we'll just collect one of these bins, take them to our farm, and just offer that closed loop of food waste into food.
Interesting. And so, I've moved to the Blue Mountains recently, which is about an hour and a half out of Sydney proper, Sydney CBD, I guess, for anyone who's not in the Sydney area. So, and when I was living in an apartment in a city, there was a little purple thing, and you could put food waste in it, and hopefully magically something happened to it. I don't know if that did or not. I think it did get taken care of. That was is part of the gap here that in a lot of places that doesn't exist.
There's no service.
That service doesn't exist, right?
Yeah,
so this isn't replacing it. It's providing it, because it doesn't apply.
Yeah, and that's because there hasn't been commercial areas to do actual food composting on a large scale.
Right.
And that's why, for example, we're in now the LGA of Lake Mac, who offers that food
Lake
waste
Macquarie.
collection. Yeah, for sure. And so they've been doing a food waste collection for maybe a couple of years now. That's because they have a massive facility which can actually now handle food waste.
Right.
And that's where our compost is going now as well, to give us the ability for scale.
Yep.
But Newcastle, where we've just kind of been, doesn't have that at the moment.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's just so right on the threshold of where these are not actually available for communities at the moment. So a service like ours, where we were manually composting it here, we would host a bin where that would be one household. 5 to 10 households would join that bin. They put their food waste in, we collect it, bring it here, compost it, and turn it into compost, and then grow produce from it.
And it's part of that saying, if the solution doesn't exist, we have a model to provide it.
Totally.
If it does, it's fine that it does. We don't need to provide it.
You're exactly right.
Right. And so that's super, super fascinating.
Yeah, there's so many wins. Yeah, there's so many. It's like food waste into food. There's community-driven food production. Yeah.
And then do people at the restaurants or connected to the restaurants, I don't even know at the restaurant, but relationship with the restaurant, end up with a relationship to the farm in some way other than knowing about it? Do they come out?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, what's the what's the
customers of those
cafes? What's the
cafes?
accessibility of the farm itself?
Well, that just brings us to 1 hour farming. That's like
what's 1 hour farming?
That's like one of the great parts about what this is about, and I think the huge value add of an urban farm, having a farm in an urban context, is that people can get to it.
Right. Yeah.
And that's it, and that's so. Yeah, we created a program called 1 hour farming. That just means any day of the week that is get in contact with us, but generally it's a Friday or a harvest day. We generally have 30 to 40 people here each week, and we're just helping with the harvest. They walk away with some produce themselves. But it's, as I was saying before, it's just like connecting with other people.
Yeah.
And you're just meeting a whole new group of friends who, it's becoming more of a common interest for people to know where their food comes from, or just, go and do something different. Go on a date. You can just meet someone. It's true. I've met so many lovely people here. No, isn't just friends, but isn't like people bring friends just to interact with them in a different scene instead of something else.
I could be projecting here, so tell me if I am. But when someone said you could come here and there's a thing about 40% the size of a football field and grow a bunch of food, firstly, I'm kind of just amazed that that's possible. But I think on a personal level, when I think about growing food, I'm kind of nervous, because I'm scared of myself, my own abilities. I'm like, I don't know how to do it. Food dies. People are like, I can't keep a house plant alive kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they take that attitude into their food. Like, why would I bother? Like, do you see that? Is that a lot of what people are doing?
I was that person about 10 years ago.
Oh, and you're fifth generational farmer.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's beef cattle as well. It could have been different. So produce itself, certainly grew things, but so it's been such a journey for myself, and that's why people who come here all of a sudden, that's how you harvest the carrot. Or it's so many funny times when you have an early childhood centre here, and the staff member who are looking after them.
How old are these kids?
Oh, they're 5-year-olds.
Okay,
they're the cutest things in the world.
Yeah,
it's my desktop background.
There's a lot of stuff that's not good for a 5-year-old. By the way, star pickers.
Yeah, it's
just stuff there.
We're just gonna learn the hard way as well.
Yeah.
But it's been great because when you partner them up, it's so funny. Like you see a 5-year-old harvesting their first carrot, and at the same time, it's the first time that adult has harvested a carrot. As well. And you're just like, that's this disconnect. You're like, wow, even just that right there is the huge disconnect. You can see that's just needs to change. Honestly. So I think these are just platforms for going, that's how you propagate a little bit of cabbage. Oh, okay, cool. Is it okay if it looks a little bit brown sometimes? Yeah, of course it is. Whatever it is.
It's almost a safe place for asking these questions.
Yeah, it is, certainly. And you can be silly. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
I think it's just, you've got to make that inviting and encouraging.
Yeah. So just that 1 hour, what did you call it?
1 hour farming.
1 hour farming.
Yes.
If I don't want to be too procedural because it sounds like it's somewhat unstructured, but in a good way, but what's what they typically, if you say to someone, hey, come and do this 1 hour farming thing, what are you saying to them?
I think what it is, isn't someone who's kind of coordinating those sessions. I think you're gauging perhaps the capacity of the individual at that time as well, whether they're interested in doing something that they're really strong in. Right now. I love that. There's a spider just hanging out. Hey, buddy.
That was on you before earlier, that spider, by the way.
Great.
Yeah. I just thought not to say it.
That's awesome. So you could, the whole point of what the outcome of the 1 day of 1 hour farming here would be is that they're trying to harvest produce, help us get involved with that. That's one thing, because trying to do this by yourself sometimes, as in years ago.
Just the logistics.
it's just, you just got to get it done. You got to get the produce. Originally, our kind of intended market for this wasn't necessarily the subscriber base, and it was when we were heading to the farmers markets, and that was getting the produce straight there. I love this photo. I think how that staged day looks like is that people will come up in between like 9 and 10 or 10 and 11 for different slots, but we say 1 hour farming, but they stay for 4 hours if they want to. It's up to them if they want.
Yeah.
So you're just saying, hey, would you like to do this?
And you're kind of meeting people where they are.
Correct.
You know nothing.
You're reading the room.
Pull a tomato out.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. Pull a carrot out.
Or would you like to wash some veggies? Whatever it is. Or would you like to propagate some things? Would you like to plant some things? Would you do some seeding or whatever?
What's propagating? Taking a thing that's living and make another one.
You legend.
Okay, great.
It's basically like you're kicking something off. Like, so you need to start. Like, so you could have like a seed tray, which needs to put soil into the seed tray, and then you're popping little seeds into that seed tray. Do you want to move this?
Oh, okay. So there's a jumping spider just in front of where we're recording. That's what that was. That was a jumping spider.
We are so out in nature. It's great. Yeah, so it's just different capacities and just reading the room.
And are people, do you think in some respects, is it helping someone who might have a desire to just do something themselves in their own backyard, not to try and do something else, to go and do that thing and kind of take a leap on that? Is that kind of what you see?
Or stories. I'll always say, we've just started to, grow this at home. Is it okay if it's doing this or it's turning out like this? And I think it's a bit of a journey for everyone because
I actually have a question for you relating to this.
You've been on a journey.
I've been on, I had a long day a few weeks ago, work-wise, and I had to pick up my 3-year-old son from daycare, and I'm like, I just want to go and get a pizza and chill out. And the place we landed was a kind of a bar that had pizzas, and I got him a mocktail because I got myself a cocktail because I felt like I earned it. But it came with this amazing piece of mint, his mocktail.
Yes.
I'm like, and I said to him, I think you can strike this.
Yeah.
Can I strike that?
Yeah, I reckon you could. Just put it in a glass of
That's what I did. I put it in a glass and some roots will come out the bottom of it. It hasn't happened yet. I've been like wanting to put it in another green smoothie and it will come.
Yeah,
it will happen.
You will. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I wasn't wrong in that.
And that's it.
Is that a form of propagation, by the way?
Yeah, that'd be exactly.
Okay, great. Yeah. All right. Okay, awesome. Okay, so that's the kind of thing that you can take away from this kind of experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Like just anything, because there is like you can imagine the million questions that are associated with anything to do with growing. And like you might just in conversation, you'll just come across that. It's an environment where you can just ask anything.
Yeah. And I think it's, I don't know, I'm projecting, but I think it's all out there, right? You could go and read the thing and go to the internet and find the thing, but it's hard to know what to ask. You don't know, like I bought a cauliflower and it sort of just stayed there and didn't do anything. And I didn't know what I was doing wrong. I don't know whether it was soil or water. I was watering it too much or not enough. Or like I just don't know.
I swear there's an app ready for something like that as well. Just to lead.
Is it?
I feel like there should be.
I don't know. I'm sure there is.
I was thinking about this the other day for people growing indoors, just to kind of.
Well, this is outdoors. This isn't
even like wherever. Just like for people
take
in
a photo.
What am I doing? They need okay, will this plant? Or they kind of gauges the temperature in this room for over a couple of days, how much sunlight it's getting. It'd be great to just actually then work out. Okay, what is the tiny amount of plants that will fit to grow in this little conditions or this environment.
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea.
Well, that's one of the next. Make that, please, for the rest of us, even the farmers. There's sort of two avenues I want to go down here. I'm curious just to understand your story in arriving at this, but also before I want to get to that, so the farm we're on today is, you're packing it up in some respects and moving to the new location. Where's that one? Curry, which is like another 20 or 30 k's from here.
Yeah, I reckon it's about 20 minutes.
Okay, so that's 20 k's.
Yeah.
By my previous mathematical extrapolation. Okay, so and the motivation for moving there is basically more space or a bigger
more
option?
land. Well, I think one of the indicators of, one of the signs of urban farming is that you may not be at a location forever as well. Right. And so that's like you can put a contract together or however.
Very ephemeral.
Yeah, well, it's not
millennials are going to love it.
It's not necessarily our land. So
right.
You can negotiate, say, maybe every 2 years we negotiate and make sure that everyone's still on the same page and making sure that happens. But, things change, and that's just what is happening. And
then just in terms of the infrastructure to turn a plot of land that was a farming annoyance.
What do you need? Physical infrastructure?
Yeah, and what's the kind of maybe the capital, but I'm thinking more the resources required to go plot of land. We're now able to produce stuff on it.
Yeah, I reckon. So I've put a prospectus together for this whole reason, so we can replicate this for other things. And I think it takes for someone to manage that kind of new setup phase plus the infrastructure needed. It's about 60K, I would say, to start up a new location.
Yep.
And you need basically an acre or anywhere from half an acre, but ideally an acre would be great.
Yeah.
And that's infrastructure-wise, what you need is probably from what you see. You can see you need kind of a washing area for actually when you're harvesting the produce to be able to keep it clean.
It's fairly straightforward. Like the structure, just to describe it, it's a temporary structure, clearly, right?
Correct.
So it's like with scaffolding or something. How's it?
That is the epitome of kind of a farm hand doing some awesome makeshift putting up a roof.
It doesn't need to be council approved, presumably.
No, it doesn't.
It's not a structure.
Yeah,
no one's living
temporary
in it.
It's temporary,
right?
For sure.
Okay, yeah.
So it's basically a cover, so we can actually do the operation,
washing and
which is washing
seedlings.
and packing the boxes,
Right.
and just bundling and making sure they're getting to where they need to go.
Yep.
Other than that,
water,
a little bit of electricity to wash. You may see a kind of a second-hand washing machine over there, which actually spin dries the lettuce that we grow as well. It washes them first, chuck them in there, it does that.
Right.
Other than that, maybe a walk-behind tractor just to kick it off. As in, so I've taken this now up to our family farm because we're moving.
Yeah.
But that's just a farmer. Sorry, that's a tractor, a walk-behind tractor, which is as big as this table, nothing massive.
Yep. Stressful table for those.
Yes, yeah.
Playing at home.
It's not like a huge table. And that will turn the beds from the original, from kind of grass into soil. You could use tarps to kill the grass.
Basically pull them all out and stuff.
Yeah, it depends. So there's a whole process we could totally deep dive.
It'll be on the website.
We could form a course if you want.
You will be, I'm sure.
That's great.
2-hour farming.
Exactly. And so, really minimal infrastructure to kick it off.
Yeah.
It's just, I think the labour is the
right.
part. Yeah.
And usually so I want to sort of move from that to this, like you're moving this particular one, but what you're doing is a test for how can you replicate this model of find a place 100%. And plot and set this thing up.
Yeah.
So where are you at in the journey with that one that you're doing the new place that's being set up, and then where to from there?
Yeah, so that new place has already been set up, and
that's right.
Done.
Okay.
We've done that the last couple of months.
But I think the thing I'm interested in is it sounds like you found a bunch of, or a small group of people who are like, we want to take this on.
Yeah.
And they've taken it on.
Yeah, the legends.
What did that look like?
They're 1 hour farmers. That's how it started. This is like the best example.
They came from 1 hour farmers.
Yeah, this is the whole thing.
You got to connect the dots for me.
And that's exactly it.
Was that a Zoolander reference?
I'm just saying it as it is. But that's the best example of people who may have not been exposed to farming,
right?
And they're living in an urban context. They perhaps were growing things in their own backyard, and this is something cool.
Yeah.
It's Maddie, Loz, and James. They're awesome. They're the best additions to feedback ever.
Yeah.
They came along as 1 hour farmers. I was at the pivotal stage where I needed to actually start to focus on something else. So I was like, okay, Maddie and James and Loz, would you be interested in perhaps a little bit of work to do this? And it's taken that on, and then ultimately it's allowed me to free myself up to work on perhaps
the model,
like the prospectus, and then say we can take this somewhere else. And then now they were running this farm themselves for 6 or so months by themselves, and then
the one that we're on at the moment.
Correct. And then now the whole situation is that we need to move here, need to move somewhere else, and now it's like, cool, well, it's time for you guys to create your own entity, which is like the best thing ever. It's the best model of how exactly it happens.
Yeah,
like you can go through all the stats about, I think we've been like a catalyst for 3 other local farms around here as well. There's been we've employed 10 people here, 15 or so people from here, and then 3 of them have started their own new farm.
Right.
We've educated about 8 schools from around here coming to here as well, and just there's
awesome.
A myriad of facts which can help.
Yeah.
But you can just see the compounding effect of what would happen if these start to replicate elsewhere. All of a sudden you're creating a new generation of people who actually know where their food's going and coming from as well. And where were we going with this?
Well, I'm curious to understand what the model looks like from here, because if you've got one that you're already setting up under the new model, which is some people who came to the 1 hour farming, they've put their hand in their pocket for 60 grand or 50 grand or whatever to have enough resources to set it up. Yeah. Presumably within a certain period of time, it's paid back that 60 grand. So they have a self-sustaining thing, 3 or 4 months. Okay. So, which is amazing.
That's the kicking off from where to go, as in from their land to actually starting to grow produce. I'd say the recovery of that funding will be a couple of years, I'd say, or at least a year or so.
Yep. Yeah. So they live off it, and then they sort of get ahead from there.
Which is a great
fun.
For that.
I mean, your solar payback is 4 or 5 years.
There you go.
Right. So it's fine.
Yeah. To kick it off, to just start these kind of plots elsewhere in different locations is the key. So the whole version of what I'm doing at the moment, is to access industry sponsors who are, I guess, mission aligned to wanting to achieve something like this, which is along the UN SDGs, which is
Sustainable Development Goals.
Thank you. United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. We've got a couple of different ones that we're touching on, but one of them is actually responsible consumption and production, which is for sure. Yep. And then halving food waste as well. Yep. And so from this, the whole idea is just to collaborate with. We've got collaboration through Oz Harvest, Biopack, Biobag, Remondis, and just recently given an EPA innovation partnership. Which is fantastic to be able to say, cool, we've got this credibility, these models work. let's see if we can align to potential social impact investors to say, hey, would you be interested to get behind this, to give us this amount of money to kick this off for other communities? And then,
And so this is the bit that I really want to understand. So to go from this one, influence 2 or 3 others to start, help a group of 1 hour farmers to set up their own one under the model that you've got.
Mm-hmm.
You've talked a couple of times or mentioned a couple of times a prospectus. I'm assuming this is a document that is a kind of a blueprint for how we go from 1 to 10 or 1 to 100.
Correct.
Like, just talk a little bit about not the prospectus itself, but what you're having to do to unlock here, and kind of what the barrier is.
It's people. It's
brilliant. It's people,
isn't it? I think that's just anything with life, connecting with the right people. I'm about to go through a mentor service through UON, University of Newcastle. Sorry.
Yeah.
And it's all just going through, as you probably know, just like trying to network. This has been the biggest period of development for myself to work on a couple of skills of like project management and strategic objectives and implementation, and then how to engage with the potential new community stakeholders, which would involve like the volunteers to industry sponsors as well. So there's a whole development going on for myself from that. But what I found is just having, like, I'll say it again, that prospectus, it's just having something on paper to say, hey, look, this works.
This is what it is.
This is. And it was just a huge brain dump to say, this is what needs to be here to show people what we can just present to people. Now the idea is to network with the right people to say who is interested in this, and this is what are the outcomes that will be once we set these up. The whole vision, what we're trying to do in the next 2 years, is set this up within 12 communities within 2 years.
Right.
And that's from just understanding how much time can be contributed to setting one of these up, but I think we have the capacity to do that amount.
Yeah.
And I think that's a realistic kind of goal as well.
Yep.
So biggest takeaway right now is, if there's anyone listening who wants to get behind this, that's where we're going.
And but I do want to, I want to just land on this particular point. Typically, a prospectus is something that you'd be used to go and raise money.
Correct.
But you talked about resources and people being kind of the gap here. Is it I need the capital to employ people to be able to execute the plan, or is it that the model works, it's fine, but I need another Matt and Loz and
and Jimmy.
James,
thank you.
James,
Matt and James are brothers.
Yeah, and Loz. Yeah. Which is Lauren, presumably.
It is Lauren. We've become really
Australian. We just shorten everything.
Loz that. No, so the point now is like, where do we go? And I think, like, if you take a step back, like, what is the best way forward and like, why am I taking the way I'm about to head into?
Right.
Is so we're about to turn into a non-profit for the whole reason to build perhaps the skill sets and experience of our board,
right,
and to just build the brains trust of like, okay, so we've got about 5 board members who are ready to commit to this, and we need a skill set that are around kind of people who perhaps are more commercially heavy kind of thing, so they can get us the access to land. The side of actual accessing funding for sure, like philanthropic contributions, and then actually just getting the right people. As you say, how do we access another James, Matt and Lauren? Yeah. And that's where we're at. And so I feel like non-profit, building the skill set, and actually then making that somewhat of a deductible gift recipient kind of status as well, so that we can actually then make the prospectus way more easier to contribute to our organisation through deductible gift recipients status kind of thing. So it's just about how do we make it easier for people to contribute.
Yeah, and get involved and or pick it up and run with it themselves.
Yeah, and it's more about we'll support the new startups for however long
the new
needs,
farms,
to be honest.
thing.
Exactly.
Yep.
But it's like we don't necessarily want to be able to direct where they need to go. We'll definitely offer the support, but it's more about they need to, but I think it's great if they can pursue their own passionate way of growing.
Yeah.
And we'll provide them support through eternity. But it's just, I don't want to say that this is
not
the
prescriptive.
Way. It's
it's a moving target anyway.
Yeah, and everyone has their own interests.
Yeah, and then you spoke about there being 12. Is this realistically and relationships? I'm presuming that the 12 will kind of need to be here and the next 2 or 3 steps removed from here,
not too far away.
Yeah.
Well, it depends. Excuse me, please. I'm about to present something in Melbourne pretty soon, like in another month or so, and I'm not limiting myself to here for sure, and I have the drive and passion to make this happen elsewhere. So I think it's logistically, I think it's once you build that skill set of people who are a part of that board, and perhaps that opens up networks from here, there'll be multiple people like myself helping.
Yeah. And if someone, I guess the reason I'm asking is if someone listening was interested in, being a Matt and a James
absolutely.
and a Loz,
get in touch.
Get in touch, because there is a blueprint here that you could, if you're like, I want to do this thing, and I don't have a specific way I want to do it, but I do know of some land that I have access to.
it's been a great reshuffling of what we have been trying to put together. Like
Sure.
It's been the biggest pilot ever. So when I say that, it's because we're now completely changing the website to as in who is our audience now.
Right.
Like when you think about it, it's exactly right. It's
the
like
farmer.
the people, it's the farmers, and it's also the contributors, the financial contributors as
Yeah.
well. So like we need to position that. Say, okay, cool. Who are we trying to talk with now?
Right.
Yeah.
And how did you get here? I mean, I know you drove a ute here on the way in, but I mean, like if you talked about right up front being a fifth generational farmer, but I mean, and is this kind of the relationship that this generation is having with farming, and this is a larger cohort that you've come through, or is there something that happened like in your life where you hit a moment or whatever?
I got to 30 and I moved back to the family farm after
Why?
Yeah, exactly.
No, but I mean, not in a rude way, but why did something drive that? Or
I think that even though there's no parental thing to say this is what you need to do, it was never there. But for some reason, I felt like that was the future that was associated with my trajectory.
Okay. Yeah,
and the same as my sister as well. And so now we moved back, and I was just thinking I'm a pretty gregarious type of person and like to be with other people. So it was just a background in hospitality, a penchant for community. And then actually this kind of inclination for farming and thinking like, how do I combine those three sides of things? And so seeing food waste when I was working I studied business in hospitality years ago, and that's how that has linked up. And now moving back to the farm, thinking, okay, I need to also go back to the city more often. So it actually all started by me visiting cafes saying, hey, I could collect your food waste as a soil conditioner on our farm.
Yeah.
And
people love that story.
I loved having a coffee. That was great as well. Something.
No, but I'm guessing that people went, well, we already put it into a recycling thing or whatever.
Well, they were just
and we don't know what happens to it.
Yeah, I think they were just putting it into landfill. Like that was the thing. It wasn't 8 or 10 years ago. It wasn't a thing.
Right.
And it's you would go to cafes and restaurants and say, hey, this is our service. This is what we do. Just letting you know this is available. And people were like, oh, really? I
didn't think that was an option.
It wasn't an option. People just didn't care.
Didn't care. Right.
And that's fine. And then that's definitely changing now. And I love that that's happened. And then, I think actually I went to Series in Melbourne about 6-7 years ago.
Sure.
And that's a great example of urban growing for sure.
Right.
And so many different facets of it. And just triggered the idea of, wait a second, why don't we do these things in an urban environment, do the food waste here as well, grow produce, reconnect with people with where their food comes from, and it just seems to be a no-brainer. There is so many no-brainers from it, so it's just, that's why I'm doing it.
I love it.
Pretty easy. I love doing it. It's fun. It's certainly entertaining.
Dave, well, it was a pleasure. Like, I'm stoked to see it. I'm stoked we got it on such actually quite a lovely day.
I think we had every interaction possible.
We had it all. But no, look, it was like I don't know. I'm enthused to hear it, and I think we're at a point, as you said, in society where this is possible, and it's more possible. People are more accepting of it. People are more interested in it. People do like urban areas, but they don't want their urban areas to be concrete jungles. And I think a lot of people, once you have a connection to food and nature, and those things are obviously massively intertwined, don't want to give that up.
Yeah.
And why would you not want more of that in your cities? Like, there's a lot to be solved in what you're doing.
I think so. And just succinctly, like, putting what we actually do, we're converting food waste into food on urban farms. Like, that's like what it's all about.
Spot on.
If you bring it down to a sentence, I feel like just growing food's future is
urban. Yeah, I love it.
Cool.
Well, thank you for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
So much.
Talk soon.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Shape the System. As usual, if you'd like to suggest a guest, someone that you know who's helped change a system for the better, please go to www.shapethesystem.org, click on the top right-hand corner, then click Suggest Guest. Make sure that you click subscribe so that you get the new episode. Shape the System is an independent podcast with support from KPMG High Growth Ventures. Connects founders to the services they need along their journey. Whether you are looking to refine your strategy, mature your finance function, prepare for a capital raise, expand abroad, or simply comply with regulatory requirements, they provide you with the support you need to drive your business forward.